Oh.
Here we go. All right, everybody, we are live. Welcome. I love this delay that we have because you see a little the background of what we do before we start.
I know,
anyway,
I did think you should do a compilation of all the beginnings of our Wine Wednesdays where we're looking slightly awkward.
A compilation, yeah. But we're here, we're back. It's been a couple weeks. We've got Wine Wednesday, keeping it fresh with a little Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
See what we did there?
Yeah, I don't know if we are being ironical. But welcome, everybody. We've got 4 viewers so far. We'll wait until a few more people come in, but...
you shouldn't look at that number.
I like looking at the number.
I know,
it lets me know how many people are here.
A number queen.
Everybody listening on the podcast, I'm giving a very mean, questionable look.
He just rolled his eyes. Yes, girl.
Man, it's less than a minute in, and she's already insulting me. This is my life.
Numbers queen. Is it?
It's numbers queen. I like seeing how many people are talking. It doesn't matter whether or not I'm going to be delivering. It's just good to see what kind of...
You said you were going to wait. You're like, so it does matter. Sorry, yeah. I mean, I'm a bit in an argumentative mood.
Well,
I'm overtired.
We have...
I've jazzed out Fresh Prince.
Let us know that you can see and hear us, as always. It helps. Hey, Lee J. Welcome.
Lee J. Hello. Hello.
It does help just make sure the tech side of everything is working. I had a chicken Caesar salad for dinner, so I'm going to hope that my dragon breath doesn't make its way over to Felicity. But
any more than normal?
Probably didn't even have to say that. She probably didn't even notice. But
we
still have Fresh Prince and DJ Jazzy Jeff in the background. Thank you, Robin.
I basically, it's not that I smell it. It's just that every now and again you'll do a burp.
Oh, that doesn't help.
And then I'll bring it up because I'm supposed to be. I'm a terrible co-host. You're right. I'm argumentative today.
It's just knocking me down one step. I shouldn't have mentioned the chicken Caesar salad, but it is just past dinner time out here in Los Angeles. If you're on the East Coast, hopefully you are avoiding the horrible hurricane that is heading your way, and anybody in the Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina vicinity is finding shelter somewhere else. It's going to be pretty rough. But everybody stay safe. If you're not out on the East Coast and you're just enjoying your night, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for joining us. And if you're listening on the podcast, thank you so much. We appreciate you very much for tuning in.
Yeah.
Hope we say something interesting and not just me picking on Max.
Yeah, and you can watch the cat in the background if we're not interesting enough, and she will probably start scratching at that couch relatively soon.
No, she doesn't do that. She's got her own little scratchy place over there. Bella, don't let me down.
Yes, I got an eye on her. But anyway, everybody, thank you for joining. Of course, this is Max Tim, Felicity Wren. We work for the International Screenwriters Association. Wow, holy moly. But anyway, so we've got, obviously, Nickelodeon Writing Program is one of our wonderful, amazing sponsors.
We love them.
January is when they're going to open up their
2nd.
submission process. So if you have spec TV scripts that you have written, meaning pilots or versions of episodes of shows that already exist, you should go to nickwriting.com.
That's a way to make it fresh, isn't it? Because basically you're making something fresh of something that already exists. Which
is not easy for an existing TV show, especially when you know the writers of that show are going to be reading your spec. But that's what they do. That's what the Nick Writing Program does. They judge an episode of a TV show that you have spec'd of an existing show.
Yep.
And then hopefully you end up becoming a part of their fellowship, which could be career
salary.
launching. Yeah.
You get a salary for a year if you're an American, and you go, and if you're from elsewhere, I think it's 6 months' salary. Because probably the money has to go towards your lodgings and... Yeah,
there's...
but anyway, it's a great package.
Huge opportunity, and so you should definitely check out the Nickelodeon Writing Program.
We love them very much.
They've been incredibly supportive of the ISA and Wine Wednesday, obviously, and so we give them all the love.
And they're also doing Table Read My Screenplay in Austin. They're supporting us there. And last night at our event, they supplied little notebooks. So
That's
Nickelodeon are amazing.
Yeah, what was the event last night?
The event was my round table speed dating event for creatives.
Right, so it was kind of a special event. First time, I shouldn't even say we, it was the first time Felicity's done it. Molly Cash, our director of operations. She, she and Felicity just totally knocked it out of the park. It was just
and
really
Katie
cool.
McLean, who is our director that we used for Table Read My Screenplay, Hollywood. That's how we became friends, and she is an amazing woman. She is an Emmy Award-winning actress and writer-director. She's won many awards for her directing too. And she had this idea, and we thought it was a great idea, about bringing people together of each discipline. So we had 6 people from each discipline, which was screenwriters, DPs, directors and producers. So we just put them all in a room together. We made them have a speed date.
It's great practice for taking meetings, and that's one thing that Nickelodeon Writing Program eventually puts those finalists through. It's really extensive process of meeting people and high-level executives, and so we had a whole bunch of those types of people in one room.
At Canon, actually. Canon were amazing.
Yeah.
Canon at Burbank. You're watching this broadcast using a Canon camera.
They didn't give that to us,
but they were very supportive. They gave the space. They gave us cheese platters and fruit, and they really want to get creatives inspired to work together.
Yeah.
All about building community, which of course is what the ISA is based on. So it was a very harmonious. It kind of fit together very well. We're taking out a survey to see what are the people that attended. We're going to do it again. I think we're already talking about November.
Yeah. It's a very cool event.
It was good.
Cool. It's invite only. It isn't something you apply for. It's usually, how did you select the writers? It's mainly a lot of our top 25 writers, people who are in town that can represent the ISA well.
We all made lists. We made lists of our DP contacts that we had, our director contacts, our producer contacts, and then we looked at diversity. We looked at whether you were male or female. We looked at age range, and we just really put together a mix of everything, so that we felt that all sides were represented fairly. We didn't just make it a women only thing, even though it was organised by 3 women.
It's emblematic of what the ISA is trying to do, just help writers as much as possible. It was a free event, and we're going to be trying to do that a lot more in the future, just because we try to make this as all-inclusive as possible. Not every writer is created equal. Sorry. It's just the truth. Some people have spent more time on it than others. Some people have a natural talent. Some people have to spend more time to develop that talent. And so, the cream rises to the top eventually, but you all can be a part of that cream eventually. And what you're watching this and you're looking to learn and educate yourself. So
and that honestly is the best thing.
Yeah, it's really
being
the whole
open.
point.
And that was the other thing that in the selection process was people who are willing to share, who have a story to tell, and who have a bit of moxie. You need to get out there and sell yourself.
Be sociable. Yeah.
Well,
anyway,
easy.
So again, thank you to Nick Writing Program. I see EJ is in North Carolina, and you're still there.
Oh, EJ,
hopefully
stay safe.
Everything's all right out there, EJ. But this may be the only highlight of the week.
You should say hello to everyone else as well. That Karma Girl was up there. Hello, writer Karma Girl. Hello,
Martin, Bruno, Robin, Maeve, Lee J. Thank you, everybody, for jumping in.
It's always nice when you come and say hello. It always makes us feel good.
Yeah.
We love hearing from you. We love seeing you.
It's an open Q&A. Any and all questions you have, fire away. You can ask anytime.
We do have a question from, but we'll do that after we've finished going, because we do have one other sponsor.
I don't know what the Story Farm is. Tell me what the Story Farm is.
Oh, it's you don't want my explanation of it, not today.
Story Farm is obviously my little consulting company. It's an association with the ISA. No, we've grown quite a bit.
It's medium.
It's actually been a pretty cool, I think almost 2 years come October-ish, November, that I started taking on clients. And
I remember looking at your logo.
Yeah, I created a fun little logo.
We had a little discussion about the logo.
So anyway, all it is weekly coaching and consulting. I give notes, and I have 3 other coaches that are working with writers as well. And it's a constant weekly deadline of developing material. We give notes on that material. We work through and brainstorm how do we get over these hurdles, what's working, what isn't. And you can go 3, 6, or 12 months.
And it just basically makes you accountable. You have someone you have to be accountable to whilst producing work with an outside eye, which, your friends run out.
It's educational too, though, because, I had one writer today who I was talking to about how to paint a scene, because she had, a lot of really nice high energy scenes, but then she would go from a high energy scene into something that was supposed to be much slower and more emotional. Like you go from a big fight between 2 people, it's really dramatic and they're screaming and yelling at each other, and then you come quickly to the next scene where that one of those characters is lying on the couch crying, but there was no transition, so there was no level of, as I'm reading, I'm in this moment and I'm consuming that scene, and then I moved to the next scene, and it was just almost like we were not even glossing over the emotional moment of her on the couch crying. We didn't give me a chance to really sit in and feel that person crying on the couch. And so as opposed to me just saying, well, this isn't working, let's do this instead, I have to tell you why I'm thinking that way. And most people who give notes don't necessarily give the reason why behind the note. And that's what a coach is supposed to be doing for you. It's supposed to be explaining, why am I giving you this note? Otherwise you don't learn and you just take everybody else's notes. Eventually you shouldn't need a coach. Like, the whole point is to not have one after a while. And then every now and then you get notes from people.
Yeah,
like
I agree.
Meryl Streep doesn't necessarily see her coach every single week, but we do have cats that climb on laps every now and then, and
Ella.
she doesn't have to do this every week either. But I think you get what I'm saying. I think you know what a consultant is and a coach is, but we try to take a very educational, hands-on approach with the Story Farm. You can go to thestoryfarm.org, or you can email me, max@thestoryfarm.org, if you have questions. So there you go.
Yes,
Let's
and it's
pour
really
some
good,
wine.
and you've had some very nice success stories, which is also very
Which we are
good.
going to talk about as a part of some of the other little announcements we're going to make. We have had a lot of really awesome success stories. I'm giving you the bottle.
Oh, thank you.
And
I mean, it's very generous. Thank you.
some really, actually, why don't we just go into that? So what are some of the success stories that we've had recently?
Well, Chelsea Watkins.
Chelsea Watkins is one of our top 25 writers.
Yeah, her script Powder Puff, which I read and really liked, I think maybe 3 years ago in its first incarnation. And we gave her a prize in a table read my screenplay.
Yeah, right. It was a table read, like second or third place or something.
It was the top of her genre. She didn't win the grand prize, but it was the top of her genre.
Yeah, it was a genre winner. Yeah.
So I've been close to it since then. So I've been, hello. I've been kind of like, as she's gone through the revisions and as it's kind of progressed further down the line, and then she became a client of yours at the Story Farm, didn't she?
Then she jumped in. She first took the live class that I started a while back. I'm not doing that anymore. We are going to be launching an elevated version of Connect called Connect Plus, which is going to have a live online class eventually, hopefully by the end of October. But I used to do a live class here in Los Angeles. Chelsea jumped into that class. I worked with her on a few scripts during that live time, and then she switched over to the weekly coaching, and she's been with me for almost 2 years. And we worked on Powder Puff a decent amount when we first started, but then she's been developing a bunch of material as well. But now she's at a place where all that material that she also developed on top of Powder Puff is getting her a bunch of meetings. Powder Puff is the one that's getting her notoriety. She signed with a manager, and that manager's getting her out. But what's fun is that Powder Puff script is out to, I think, 5 or 6 pretty top level directors.
Incredible,
really big names.
Female directors.
Really big names.
And some A-list actors who are now directing. So it wasn't just directors, it's A-list actors who are looking to direct their next project.
There's no guarantee that those directors are going to come on, but it's still exciting because just so that you get a little bit of a background, it's not as simple as emailing one of these top-level directors and saying, would you read this script and consider it to direct it? A lot of these A-list people, they have teams of agents that have to determine, and they all have to read the script, which, it takes forever for anybody to read a script. So 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks go by, and the entire team of agents, which is sometimes up to 4, 5, or 6,
yeah, especially
have
the
to
higher
read
up the tree you get.
And then they have to schedule a meeting to then talk about just this one client and this one script. Is this something that we all really love? Which is hardly ever easy, for everybody to love the thing. And then to determine, is this something that can help advance our client's career? Is this something that, if this director, does actually attach herself to it, is that going to help for future work? Is this going to be a statement piece? So it's a big
Well, that's the thing.
meeting.
If you come with a reputation, then everything you do is a statement piece.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, exactly. If you're already famous for whatever reason, then you have to be choosing a project that then is going to elevate you even more, which is, of course, not easy. And then the agents have to convince the director to actually do it, and the director could pass on it. And then, let's say 3 or 4 of those people all say yes, and all their teams say yes. Then,
which would be a nice position to be in, a nice problem to have.
But then the producers that are on the project, plus the writer, need to sit down and basically an interview process and decide on which director. So it can take months, if not multiple years, to finally get just one person attached. Hopefully it doesn't take multiple years. But sometimes, these clients, they may be considering the project for 4 or 5 months, and suddenly they get on a huge movie that they can't pass up.
I know.
But
anyway, Chelsea, amazing, congratulations.
It's
The other thing
a big
is
deal,
Chelsea is about to have her first child.
Yeah, I
So
think
she's
going,
having a good year, I would say.
She's going in, I think, either today or tomorrow, or I think it's either today or tomorrow. She's going to have her baby. So it's pretty cool. But then we have a whole bunch of other writers. I mean, I was just talking to one at the event last night, Valerie, who's getting
Valerie Grant.
meetings with everybody around town. She's also a Story Farm writer. I actually knew her from my writers boot camp days. And I taught her there, and then she ended up taking a live class and going into Story Farm. But she became one of our top 25 writers, primarily off of one particular script that we're both high on. But also now she signed with Heroes and Villains, which is a relatively top management company, and they're sending her out to all these different meetings. And these other people that she's meeting with are finding that the other scripts that Valerie has are also amazing. So she's taken meetings on not just one script, and that's just two of her writers.
Well, what I think about that is it shows about the dedication and keeping going, because I think I found Powder Puff back in 2015, something like that. So, and she's in a great spot now, but that's 3 years later. And the same if you did your live class 2 years ago.
It was 2.5, almost 3 years ago. Yeah.
So, and they've just kept going. There's nothing better than keeping going.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yet she persisted.
And I will
really
say, I know
to.
a lot of our writers, and Felicity, you can speak to this too, because you not that we have separate people that we're working with, but in some ways, and a lot of them are struggling financially. That they're working hard just to kind of make a living. Meanwhile, they're also working hard to develop as many scripts as they can, and so their level of patience is pretty amazing. That they're willing to just continue going and waiting, and then hurrying up, and then waiting again.
But it's the thing of the artist,
isn't
it? I mean, like if you have the need to create, you'll find a way to create.
Yeah, it's just what it is. But anyway, I think the segue there is that we want to talk about writing gigs, because we also had a producer of relatively high level. He's produced a few things. He has really close contacts with Netflix. He's recently optioned 2 Christmas scripts that he posted a gig on the Writing Gigs page, optioned 2 of them, and he's going to work with those writers. Hopefully the writers say yes, and then take those scripts and pitch them to Netflix. So there are very real people that are looking at the writing gigs. A lot of them are people who are looking for partners or to team up and produce something.
I think it's a mix, like everything. If you're
totally
on any of the Actors Access, or if you're kind of on any of the, I'm sure the directors and crew have the same thing, where you can sign up for jobs that are going, and some of them you're just like, no, thank you.
So you just pass and move on. Yeah.
It's a nude advert. And
right.
They're going to give
you. But that might work for somebody. Somebody might want that.
I mean, I'm sure they can still get applicants.
Yeah.
But then there are some gems in there too, and I think the thing is we're getting more people who realise it's a great resource, because the showcase part of the Connect membership means
the more people that Felicity and I are meeting too, and Craig and Molly, and we're telling people, because after a while, and this is even current, that there has been word getting out onto the street that the ISA is helping create some success stories. So we've had more and more people say, hey, cool, send us your scripts. But
send us your best scripts.
Which is, that's nice, but there's only so much time in our day.
It's a loose idea, isn't it?
Yeah, right.
Send us your best scripts.
So, yeah.
Okay.
So we have to vet those. But point being, that's why the writing gig works. And more we're going to be telling certain producers, post a writing gig, be specific in what you're looking for. That producer will probably get 400 some odd replies, and eventually we're going to be updating and upgrading the website so that there's much more of a submission process that Felicity and I can focus on and just kind of facilitate how certain producers can find these scripts and find the writers. So
it's exciting time.
Yeah.
It's been a long time in the coming, but I guess while you've been writing, we've been waiting to do this too on your behalf and learning, and
it's a huge project to update that website.
And trying to keep it fresh.
Yeah, right. Trying to keep it fresh. There you go. Perfect. But let's go through a few more of the announcements. What do we got? $50 off development evaluation. So if you want 5 pages of probably the best notes in town for probably the cheapest amount that you can ask for, it's usually $199. This is giving you $50 off. And if the reader loves the script, they'll pass that script on to me and Felicity. We'll consider it to keep it on the slate, and we are looking for more projects.
That's the thing. As people come to us and want the best scripts, we need more scripts to give them.
At the same time, we're that much pickier because we know who is asking, for projects. But anyway, $50 off if you use Fall Dev. And James, you can probably put that in the comments. But FALLDEV, Fall Dev, and that's only good through September 20th.
And then we have some multiple entries on Table Read My Screenplay Park City, because we're going to Sundance this January. I'm, dusting off my winter boots in preparation. But they are doing a deal at the moment. They're coming up to the end of the first early bird deadline, and that's September 27th. And you can do multiple entries. I think your second, third, fourth
Second, third,
entry
and on is only $19
each. And the reason why this is a good idea is the person that won last year, Josh Sorakach, with a very funny comedy pilot series, 30-minute pilot series. It was his fourth script he entered. He was like, I might as well bung that one in as well.
Interesting.
And that was the one that got him the trip.
Yeah, there you go.
He's based in New York. He's been writing lots. I still hear from him. He's on our development slate. It's all very good.
So we also have final deadline for the Creative Screenwriting Contest. If you go to creativescreenwriting.com, that final deadline is October 10th. You should definitely apply to that contest. It's relatively new, which means it's open-ended. Anything can happen, and we're going to be promoting that in terms of the winners quite a bit. So definitely go to creativescreenwriting.com.
I think with a new contest, you don't get so many entries, so you probably have a higher chance.
That's true.
Of doing well in it.
That's true. Yeah.
Not to give any secrets away, but contests take a little time to kind of build up their momentum. Nickel,
it's been around for years. It gets 9,000 some odd entries, which, by the way, we have to congratulate one of our development evaluation readers. She also evaluates some contests, but Jordan Trappier got top 11 in Nickel Fellowship, which is unheard of. It's really incredibly special, and I think she's going to find out who. I don't know. I don't think that's. I think they choose like 6 or 7 to 8 or something, which sucks, man. Can you imagine?
I know, it's get to 11
get
and then
to top 11, and then it's like, oh well, you weren't one of the last
but not
6.
Cigar.
Nonetheless, that's a huge deal.
Amazing, because she's also one of our readers. So she reads and gives those notes. Those 5 pages of notes might come from Jordan, actually.
Right. And then, okay, Kat, thank you for loving me, but we don't need to be coming on my lap again. And then we've got Third Thursday's events. Craig James, our founder, is going to be in Chicago. If you guys are in the Chicago area, he's going to be at the next Third Thursday's event. And then we've got one here in LA, of course, next week. We have a couple special guests that I'll interview for maybe 15 minutes. You are not going to be here,
No,
right?
I'm going to be in London town.
London for her birthday for a week and a half. So
Thursday the 20th, depending on what time I'm meeting my friends. I could maybe pop to the London one.
That's a good idea. Yeah. Anyway, there are going to be Third Thursdays events all over. You can go to there you go, networkisa.org/events. And you can see if there is a Third Thursdays in a town near you. EJ, this cat is famous at this point, and she'll just keep flapping that tail right in my face as much as she can. But all right, so what else are we talking about? We talked about the Canon event. Those are all the announcements. Tonight we have one of my favorite wines.
I don't know if we're supposed to be talking very much about it today.
I just wanted to say that if you have interest of finding a bottle of wine for $6, the Firefly Ridge, probably can't really pass that up. $6 for one of the better Pinots you're going to be drinking. It's Wine Wednesdays. We have to talk about the wine a little bit.
I know a tiny bit, but it's just the fact that they aren't sponsoring us.
No, they're not sponsoring us. I'm just
and Nickelodeon.
Yeah, Nickelodeon. But we're still drinking it.
We're supposed to not make a fuss about it.
I'm not making a fuss. I want to say, if you want a $6 bottle of wine...
You can't see me drinking this wine
Don't watch
now.
us watch
like
the wine with the bottle that happens to be right here that everybody can read Firefly.
All right, then I can do the rolling of the eyes now. Are you?
Yeah,
all right, feisty, malisty.
I can dish it back. Mary Davis, Cleveland has Mike Berry, award-winning filmmaker and radio host. There you go, if you're in the Cleveland area.
Yes, Mary is our host in Cleveland, which is amazing. Thank you so much, Mary. You are wonderful, amazing, wonderful, and gorgeous. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you to everybody that's hosting all of the Thursdays. We're all over the place. I don't even remember the whole list.
No, Atlanta,
like
Toronto,
15 cities
New York,
or something. Yeah.
Manchester.
Anyway, so what are we talking about today? We're talking about keeping it fresh. I made a few notes.
Keeping it fresh.
And let's see. How can we
if
just
we suddenly lose power, it's because Bella is right.
The
She's
cat
now
is
rubbing her
behind the
face on
camera.
the camera,
and she feels the need.
and
Oh my goodness!
and she. I mean, there's so many wires that like plug into the TV and all the lights and everything back there. She could dislodge.
Anyway, we're going to talk about keeping it fresh. Bella
keeping it fresh.
has nothing to do with keeping it fresh. She's going to try to keep it familiar. That's why cats rub their faces on things, right?
Oh,
This
yeah.
is mine.
This is mine.
I want to be comfortable with this.
It's
Anyway,
now doing the lamp.
what does it mean to keep it fresh? So we could talk for 4 hours about all these different ways to try to not only look at the current material that you're working on and asking yourself, is this unique, which is a pretty general question, but there's also just this natural sense of idea generation in this attempt at trying to keep things fresh. So we made we talked for like 2 minutes about the different movies that first came to our head that were unique.
Oh yeah.
And
My 3 or 4 were. We always talk about Eternal Sunshine of the
Eternal
Spotless
Sunshine of the
Mind. So we
Spotless
always
Mind.
talk about that. So mine were Memento, Inception, Arrival, Adaptation. It may be Mulholland Drive.
Mulholland Drive is interesting. I think Mulholland Drive is probably one of my top 5 favorite movies. And what's interesting about Mulholland Drive is that on the surface, it doesn't seem like there's anything unique about it other than the style of filmmaking. David Lynch is just naturally unique because of the way he sets shots up and coloring and whatever. For screenwriters, you can have that in your brain, but it's more about delivering a story in a unique situation. But deeper down in the level of what Mulholland Drive really is, that I didn't get the first 2 or 3 times I watched the movie, is technically one actress's perspective of what she thinks Hollywood is. And when I realized that, I thought, that is absolutely terrifying.
And the horror of it.
And the horror of living in Hollywood, which is
And
so
trying
scary.
to be an actress.
Yeah, and when I finally got it was when there was like that, and again, it's all like in the mind of this woman, and there's that scene where all these executives around the table, and they keep pushing one, a headshot after another, and then they find one headshot, and there's that one executive who's really weird, and he just keeps saying, "This is the girl, this is the girl," and he's like, the actor in her head is thinking they had already chosen the role,
Yeah.
and so they're forcing that, and it's just mind-blowing. And of course, the way you see her perspective of how she auditioned, which you see both versions, and she was actually amazing, but then there's another version where she was not that great.
Yeah.
It's just brilliant. It really is brilliant. I don't know if we can compare ourselves to David Lynch so much, when we haven't quite hit that level of genius. That's other level.
I know, it's about keeping it fresh. I mean, Arrival for me is because if you haven't seen it, see it. But the twist of it, the filmmaking idea of seeing things in different times. I don't want to say too much. I don't want to ruin it if you haven't seen it. But the choices that they make because of what they know. Again, so cryptic.
I think at first, again, surface level, is that it's a new spin on an alien invasion movie at very basic level of concept, which is one of our little notes in terms of how to keep things fresh. It's a new spin on an old story. But then on top of that, with another layer, which I kind of go into in terms of the brainstorming, is starting asking questions like, what would happen if aliens came down? The first obvious one would, and they were peaceful, which I think is an important note. The primary problem is language. How do you communicate? And so it's an entire movie about communication, but then the added level of what you're talking about is the fact that there was a man and a woman who didn't know how to communicate, and it ruined. We'll see, we're going to ruin it.
Another
for you guys.
level. No, but then also the decisions that she makes, even in speaking to the ambassador of China, and so when it gets to the moment where it could all go wrong, because of course humans can't be peaceful with anyone,
right?
Because of the twist in the story that they give you, it allows you to unpick, and you see how they stop the war from happening, and
Right.
it's such a wonderful. I mean, it was a breathtaking moment when I was like watching the kind of the rewind. It was like a
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful movie, and I think it all starts with that initial idea of new spin on an old story. If you look at The Sixth Sense, it's hard to. There is no like one step to then go to another step, and how do you generate an idea? It's easy for us to break down a movie once we've seen it and start to go, well, what did the filmmaker think, or what did the writer consider? But if you look at The Sixth Sense, I'm sure one of the initial considerations was, how do I tell a ghost story that has never been told before?
Like The Others.
The Others is, we didn't write that one down, but The Others is one of my probably top 10 favorite movies. So it's one thing to go, okay, how do I add a twist? But those twists were so big, I'm sure M. Night Shyamalan...
Integral to the plot.
Shyamalan probably thought, let's go with the cliche of he's been dreaming the whole time, or he's dead the whole time. What does that mean? What kind of story can I then craft so that I trick the audience into thinking
the opposite? Yeah,
right. And then you just start putting in certain little pieces that the audience is,
Can you imagine what it must be like to have that idea? You're sat at your desk going, la la, I've got this ghost story and blah blah blah. What if? Can you imagine? It must be the
most
little
of it starts
bubble,
with the what if question. Yeah,
that little bubble of excitement where you're like, oh my god, he can, he can be alive.
Another little note that I wrote down is that it's a good segue, because these people like the David Lynch's of the world and M. Night Shyamalan's and Quentin Tarantino's, they are students of film. Christopher Nolan. They are complete students of story and film. So Shyamalan knew at that point in 1999, whenever Sixth Sense had been released, that there had not been this version of a ghost story before. There may have been little pieces of things that in the past that he was able to pull from. But he then knew, if I accentuate this element, it's something that no one else has done before. As opposed to a lot of writers who haven't quite studied film and story enough, they think their idea is incredibly unique. I've had it happen on phone calls multiple times, where they're like, here's a story idea, and I'm like, oh, well, it's kind of like that. And they're like, oh, really? I'm like, dude, you got to know that. You just wasted quite a bit of brainstorming time. You're
so what would you do then?
Story.
So what would you do? Like Google those plot lines? I mean, like, how do you find that out?
If you know you're writing in a particular genre, you need to be an expert in that genre.
You have said that.
You gotta, if you know you're going to be writing a horror movie, watch the classics. What have they done? And then tell yourself, I'm not allowing myself to do any of those things, but I still want to tell a horror story.
And I want it to be a classic.
Yeah, and yeah, that's something you don't necessarily have power over. But Gary, I agree. Gasson Malbec Gasson is very good. I remember ordering that in a restaurant here in LA, and it was like a $40 bottle or something, and I go to Vons and it's $15. Anyway, Shutter Island, it was definitely a good unique one. Let's see what else we got here. I'm directing my first film this year and I'm scared. You should be scared, Lang. You should be scared.
You can do it. Just get some good people around you. Get a very good first AD. Get a DP that you trust and understands your vision. And then just plan. Ask yourself questions. What would I do if this went wrong? What could I do to make this easier?
Right.
How can I be
the
most prepared?
Yeah. And by saying you should be scared, Lang, it means if you were confident, I'd be worried.
Well, also, I mean, you can... that fear and excitement are very close bedfellows. Mm-hmm. So I would say you're frightened with a healthy pinch of... or you're excited with a healthy pinch of fear. And the fear is the thing that makes you do your homework,
Right, yeah. That's
so
what
good
makes
for
you prepare.
That's amazing.
Eternal Sunshine, I love that one. Sin City's great. Writer needs to trust himself. Arrival was a breath of fresh air. Best movie I've seen in a while. We agree, Priscilla.
We very much agree.
Lang, I'm mostly worried that both my protagonists and antagonists are serial killers, so I'm pretty screwed if I hire on a couple method actors. Yeah, then that's something you could literally be afraid of. That's true. Let's see. Well, it's a good point. Lang, sounds like you're overthinking. Let's see what we got here. John says you have to put a new spin on an old story. There's only a finite number of original films you can make, and most, if not all, have been done. What's important is how do you tell it, definitely.
That's it. It's back to your voice. We often talk about your voice, and your perfect life experience right now is the thing that gives you your voice, which is why a good way to keep it fresh is to keep changing it up, going to different places, going to museums, reading different books, feeling inspired, looking at art, whatever really... and watching the classics. So whatever really is your...
And then how do you respond to that? And that's part of your voice. Yeah.
Because I think sometimes even going away, putting a screenplay down, thinking about something else for a bit, enjoying a different part of the creative process, whether it's music or art or watching theatre, something else just to allow your brain to rest a bit. There was a very good TED talk the other day about how, I just got a snippet of it, about how when you're bored, your brain actually, it fires off some different synapses in your brain when you're bored, and that's actually when it starts to process. So while you're thinking, you've got nothing. So if you're folding laundry or driving, or that's actually when your brain can start to figure things out. So if you have a problem or an idea in your head or something you need to fix, in those downtimes when you're doing something kind of mindless, is actually when it will start to work on it, because it's not having to do anything else for you.
Right. Yeah.
So it goes, okay, well, I've seen that problem in there, so I'll just get to that now that you're busy not thinking about something else.
Yeah.
And that's often when you figure it out. So she was saying how, I wish I could remember the person's name. I'm following her on Facebook. That actually that's why distracting yourself with the phone or the computer or something, just to kind of keep your mind occupied as soon as you have that moment of stillness or boredom, actually doesn't help you. You'd be better to sit in it.
Yeah, right.
And wait for the, and especially if you've got a question going on, that's why meditating is very good. It just gives you this stillness to sit.
Working out, taking a walk, whatever you call meditation. Yeah, definitely. Bruno, I have heard that as well. He only realized that that he's dead the whole time after the third draft. And then when the movie was released, he was thinking that the movie wouldn't be a success because he thought people would think it was Yeah, I've heard that too. But taking that even further is Shyamalan noticing probably the first and second draft just wasn't all that interesting. It wasn't that unique, and suddenly, boom, we got this idea of, what if
that
I change this,
moment.
And now we elevate it. And then, he's worried about what the audience would think. I think everybody's worried about what the audience is going to think.
Well, it's also because you want to make sure you're telling a story that they relate to and that they care about.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Shutter Island was a book, but you have to give credit to the writer, the person who wrote the book, came up with an interesting, unique idea. There was a little bit of a segue I was going to mention there. New spin on an old story. It's talking about voice and perspective. So if you are having trouble, we'll talk about keeping it fresh in terms of the idea of idea generation when you're trying to come up with new ideas. Knowing your voice is incredibly important. And I just wrote a little note saying if you're a comedy writer, as an example, and you have confidence in your dialogue and characters, knowing that you could write a scene that's really funny and you can have really a lot of fun with it, but then you might not have as much confidence in your ability to deliver a second act or something. Consider writing with that comedic type of approach or that perspective.
Dogfight.
With the intent to quiet dogs. Look at that. I think that was magic. But consider that strength of I'm really good at comedy and dialogue. What if I wrote a horror movie? Suddenly that elevates the genre, and now you haven't come up with a concept or a hook just yet, but then you start taking your perspective of I'm a comedy writer toward the horror genre. How do I elevate that so I have both elements? It's kind of what Scream did. That's why Scream was so popular, because it was it wasn't all comedy, but there were comedic moments with some interesting characters that then flipped into the horror genre, but they were also playing on this idea of what if we make it obvious that we're playing to all the horror tropes?
Yeah.
So much so that the characters are going to be talking about that, and there's a horror expert in the movie, etc. But you needed a comedy writer of sorts to be able to deliver that dialogue.
You can't cry without laughing too. The same as you can't laugh without the empathy. It's very much one needs the other.
Yeah.
And I think either comedies that don't have proper character development or some kind of moment where we really feel and understand something about these people that we're either laughing with or at means it's not as successful.
Yeah. So that's a little bit of an example. I mean, it's difficult to give you specific tasks. I think if you needed exercises to start generating ideas, start with, there are basically 4 elements that you can use to start brainstorming for. In other words, You could start with just complete character brainstorming. Build that character as if you're building some form of like a Dungeons and Dragons kind of character. Give her dexterity and charisma, and like just totally build all of her, what her flaws are, what her problems are, what her backstory. Maybe a story comes out of that. How do I then put this person into a situation? Then, of course, a second act adventure will start to come out. If instead you have an idea of some form of an adventure story that they have to go, rescue this hidden crown, or and it's all plot, then you just brainstorm the hell out of that, and then go to one of these other elements of character. Or the other two would be theme, and I should have written it down. I'm forgetting the third. I think it's
theme, character, plot.
It's the theme, second act adventure, main character. Oh, a villain. If you come up with somebody who has a negative motive of some kind, or somebody who it's the serial killer that somebody needs to catch, or if you develop any one of those four, the others will bounce off of it. So if you need to generate ideas, you can do main character with a flaw and whole backstory, a second act adventure, some form of just plot. And situation. Situation is an important word to remember, because that situation will then evolve. Theme, what am I trying to say? Am I trying to give a new perspective on some form of a political view? Or am I talking about something incredibly emotional like abuse? Or, what's my perspective on that? And or a villain, what's the bad guy intending to do or achieve? That will then generate the type of main character that's going to have to stop that
oppose
person
him,
from doing
yes.
it. Yeah.
Or her.
Yeah.
Oppose them.
So there you
And
go.
thus oppose them.
Yeah.
And thus end them. We need comments. You need to switch
We can
up.
look at some comments. I do want to say, and maybe we'll just go into questions after this, because we're just about coming up with the end of the time here. But I just want to say, never accept the first version of an idea or a brainstorm. I see so many writers come up with an idea and go, great, I'm going to go with that. But then they don't evolve the idea. You don't continue to ask questions about the idea. It's kind of like the idea of never accept the first version of a scene, because that scene might work really well, but what else can you add to it? What's missing? And obviously you don't want to be second guessing yourself, so you have to find the balance. But usually the first version of a scene is not the best version, right?
I think Mozart wrote straight from his head.
It's impossible to compare ourselves to people like Mozart and Michael Jordan and David Lynch, and we just can't do that.
But no, I think the main thing is it's the beginning of a good idea, and then but it's good to get it out, and it's good to you would say it's good to kind of then work out what it might look like, by the beats and planning and sorting that out for you, rather than just splurging it on the page. And I think the more you think about those four elements, even if you've used one of them as a starting point, if you then refer to the others,
the others, yeah.
So that you can actually, so then refer to your other points. So if you start with the character, but then you think, who is her villain in there? It doesn't need to be specifically a villain, but who is her opposing person?
Yeah, right. What's the opposing force?
It can still add. So those four elements can still really add to the questions you need to ask yourself and the script. Mm-hmm. It's always about asking questions.
Right.
How willing are you to... I gave notes to a very accomplished writer the other day, and I asked them a question about an element, about a ghost, and that didn't quite make sense. So they couldn't leave the graveyard, but yet they could still be heard in an apartment. And I was like,
right.
So what... How? And they were like, well, you kind of fudged me. You kind of like...
Sometimes logic can trip you up. Yeah, you're writing yourself into a corner.
They hadn't quite... They knew that... He had an answer, but he said, you know what, you're right. There needs to be another reason. There needs to be and then we came up with a reason. Because the thing is, you can make... It's your story. You can come up for reasons for everything.
Right.
But you need to make sure that you have, so that your reader isn't going la 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 la. Hang on a sec.
You don't want any hitch moments. You can't. Anytime a reader has to pause and go, "Wait, what was that?" Strike one. You don't want them to do that. But yeah, as far as just and I think I've used this idea before, ironically, about ghosts. But we are kind of getting into the Halloween season almost, which is kind of fun. But as far as asking yourself questions all the time, and I feel relatively confident about my own voice and who I am in terms of perspective in the world and everything, and so I am relatively addicted to these ghost investigation and haunted shows on TV.
Yes,
and stuff.
he is.
And when I want to wind down and not think about anything, I put these stupid Ghost Adventures is another show that I watch, and it's just for the fun of it. But there's a type of haunting called an attachment, that some people can go to a haunted place and then they'll go home, and that ghost basically follows them to their own home and does the hauntings there. And I had this just random thought that popped in my head of, what if the ghost didn't want to go home with that person? And it made me laugh so hard, because not only was that some form of a reference to a date or a romantic sort of situation, but
Can't please everyone.
But also that ghost would have to be then stuck with that person. And in that question, a whole situation popped in my head, like, wow, yeah, then what type of character would the human person be compared to the ghost? And then all my brainstorms just came from that one question. Sometimes you can't plan the question. Sometimes the question pops up. But a lot of times that little question you have can turn into something unique. And that's why you're constantly checking yourself. Like John is saying, he's got movies on in his house all the time. You should just find time to be watching as much of just other projects and stories, and reading books and watching TV shows, just so you're aware of what other people are doing.
Do that, but then also go to museums. There was an Airbnb. I'm staying in an Airbnb soon, and there's all these different things you can do. They've now started offering services you can go and do. And one of the things that someone was offering was going on a writer's course, and it was you met up with other writers, and someone was leading it that gave you a book, like a pad and pen and stuff, and then they took you around certain areas of the city, and you went to a museum, and then you had to write a short story about that, and then you went to this, and so you'd have to find things through the city which then inspired you and made you feel something.
Yeah, and then asking yourself, why did I feel that way?
Why did you feel? And then what kind of story might you write? And not to, I mean, it's not to write your masterpiece, but it's to get that bit of your brain going that sometimes has to go to sleep in order to do admin or to pay the bills, and so you need something that is literally a date with yourself and your art, and something like that might be it.
Yeah.
Watching a movie, if you're a writer, is work. Hopefully it's enjoyable. When they're terrible, right. It's not. You didn't like that Netflix movie recently.
So in our list of movies that we came up with in terms of different, unique, fresh takes, there was an example of a Netflix movie. I'm just going to call them out. It's called How It Ends. And
don't watch it.
Relatively new. It's a Netflix original, and so I was like, okay, let's see what movies Netflix is releasing.
Actually, watch it. See if you agree.
You should watch it.
See if you agree.
Yeah, I'm not saying don't watch it. It's you might love it. I don't know, but I watched the preview, and the concept was this young man was going to marry this girl, and he
Max is a romantic.
Okay, yes, and so he knew he needed to get his fiance's father's permission to marry her. They live in Seattle. The fiance's father lives in Chicago. He has to fly to Chicago on business anyway. He said, I'm going to talk to your dad and ask permission. Turns out the dad is this military, hardcore dude, and he's never really gotten along very well with his daughter's boyfriend, so it's this kind of nerve-wracking situation. He gets to Chicago, and he has actually a relative fight and argument with the father and never asks the guy, can I marry your daughter? The next morning, the apocalypse hits. It
can happen to anyone. It can happen to anyone.
Not biblical in form, but some huge event happens on the West Coast.
I mean, like the hurricane that's happening at the East Coast at the moment.
Yeah, I have a feeling this might be a little bigger. But so they can't get in touch with this guy's fiance. The father decides to drive across the country to try to help and save his daughter, and the future son-in-law goes along with them on a road trip to try to get to Seattle and save her. And I thought, come on, what a great setup. It's not only do I love end of the world movies, but it's a road trip movie with this type of situation of drama between a man and
prospective son-in-law,
and they're gonna have to work this stuff out on the road trip. I'm like, I love that setup. They completely messed up. The whole thing was just ruined in the second act. And I'll let you watch it. I'm not going to give anything away.
In Max's opinion. And I think
it is my opinion.
That's what's so lovely about art, is that it's objective.
Yeah.
Subjective.
And so, we could speak to that all night. Like, why did it get screwed up, and why did it?
Suddenly I realised I don't know which word to use. I'm like, oh dear, I'm overtired. I had a very big
all right. Well,
event
let's get to some questions. Priscilla asks, are pitch festivals most efficient, or subscribing to websites and contests? I think it totally depends, Priscilla. I think pitch fests are fun if you use them as educational experiences and not as a means to sell something. It rarely, if ever, happens. It's to form relationships. It's to practice your pitching.
Yeah, but it is about the relationships too, because everyone I know who really gets anywhere, it's mainly because of who they know. It's a sad but awful thing. I mean, building a creative CV is definitely part of it, because then they will find you, but then they want to help you. Or you've met someone and you can say, well, I've got all these awards and I've done this work, and they're like, okay, now I'm interested in helping you. If you just say, I've written one screenplay and no one, I don't know if anyone likes it, there's just a whole different currency for yourself and your work. So the pitch fest, I think, really good practice. It will really hone down your story. You can meet someone that you could just click with incredibly well. You will also actually meet some other nice people in the queue. You're going to meet some amazing people.
You'll probably meet more writers than you will professional people. Yeah.
No, but that's amazing. Sometimes you might meet a co-writer, or you might meet someone who is working on something and said, you know what, I have this other person that's looking for someone like you. I think probably the friendships are more likely to happen there, because it's kind of work for the industry people. Whereas I know it's work for you, but it doesn't, it's also should be fun. You have to enjoy it.
I think it's about having your hand in as many pots as possible to help yourself create opportunities. That's why, depending on your budget, the Connect membership for the ISA, it works a lot like Inktip, where you can post as many scripts to your profile as you want. I think
Inktip you have to pay per script, don't you?
Inktip charges per script, so you can create a whole profile on the ISA webpage.
You can put any.
There are a bunch of other websites that you can post scripts to, and if you can afford it, do it. You have nothing to lose. People aren't going to steal your stuff. If you don't want to make things private or make things public on your profile, then you can make it private.
Even if they had exactly the same beats and events of your project, it would never be the same thing.
Yeah, it's not. I wouldn't worry about people stealing your stuff.
But we do have a question, because actually James sent one it came through from Facebook. I attended the Hollywood Pitch Festival, which is where Table Read actually went on. Got some good interest in my script. One agency even went so far as to give me their card and send them everything they had. So he sent their email with 2 episodes from the script as well as a story bible, and then Monday morning he woke up to an email to say they'd received it, but it's now been over 5 weeks, and I don't know if it's he or she, they are wondering if they should follow up. It's been 5 weeks. I mean, they've given them the email to say, yes, we received it. 5 weeks isn't that long, I don't think.
It's the general rule, I guess, is 6 weeks.
I think
what's the difference between 5 or 6? I wouldn't hurt to email them and just say, hey, just checking in, doing my due diligence to see if you guys.
I think that's the main thing, is just kind of make it light and frothy.
You don't want to be forceful, otherwise they won't want to respond. Yeah.
It's kind of like, I was just like doing my admin and I noticed it's been a while, so I just was checking in to see if you had any news. Very light.
Yeah.
Don't make them the bad person if not getting back to you, because I promise you, they could have script piles around the office. There's probably like 50 trees in their office right now, scripts to read.
Ezra mentioned The Purge as a movie that is. I love the idea of. I have not watched The Purge, and I really want to. And they've of course had, I think, 2 or 3 at least sequels to it. But what The Purge speaks to is a situation we had never seen before, and I always try to stress that word, because the situation is the entire second act. What is the situation a set of characters are in? What are they going to be experiencing? And in The Purge, it's a situation we've never seen before. It's this idea of that one day a year, the entire country can be anarchical, that there's just anarchy. You can do whatever you want. And people choose to kill people and all this shit. I mean, I'm probably not even nailing the concept down. But that's an idea that audience members can easily wrap their brains around, and it's something they probably had not really thought of before. So that is an easy sell. It's like, wow, that's just, I can see what that is. Delivering an entertaining story, different.
Yeah.
Because they could have ruined that movie, and they could have made it about a whole ensemble, but they focused on one particular family and how,
I think that's the thing. Whenever I'm even looking at true stories, sometimes when I read scripts about true stories, which I love, and actually, it's still very much in the zeitgeist right now. Everyone still loves a true story, but you have to get at it from such a personal way. You can't just tell the events of the story, because then it doesn't affect you in the same way. You have to find a way in. You have to find the little wormhole that tells you about family or character, and really the smaller the situation or the people in the big situation going through it, the more engrossing it is.
So how do you make The Purge emotional? And then you bring in this whole idea of family and how difficult it is to keep a strong family unit. And maybe I have seen The Purge because it was... I know that the guy, the fatherhead, was a very famous actor. Ethan Hawke, I think, is who that is. And he was...
The fatherhead, the
father figure of the family. What, you're going to call me on a fatherhead?
Sorry, I don't know that term.
Man, talk about changing up my thought, but now I don't even remember what I was going to say. You can blame her for ruining incredible amounts of education you were just about to receive.
A pithy point. I've missed this pithy point.
Yeah, but Mary, I think that's a good point. Story is more than an incident. It's more than just a situation. A situation is the beginning of a story. The Purge is the beginning of a story.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
The story is what you were saying, is the emotion behind what's happening within this situation. It's why a lot of these huge big budget movies, like this movie The Meg with the huge shark and everything, you know what you're going to get when you go there. And people were like, I'm just going to go enjoy this ridiculous movie. And so they're not too worried about story. But you can elevate something and actually tell an amazing story like The Purge.
I think it'd make it much better if they did put a story in there too.
Of course.
I really don't want sharks to get bad press. They kill like 5 people a year. Cars do so much more than that. I have friends who are scared to go in the water because of sharks, and I'm like, really, they're not. They don't. It's such a tiny percentage.
Well,
it makes me...
let's defend the shark before the people. That's seeming like your idea.
Humans do many much worse things to each other, and like non-stop. Sharks 5 times a year, they're like, oh, that thing's splashing over there, I'll have a bite of that. That's it. It has no malice. It has no malice in it. Humans have full
The Meg
of
is
other
about
stuff.
a dinosaur-sized shark. I don't know how much reality is really coming into play.
Oh, well, I feel very sad about the dinosaur.
Jesus. All right, we're coming down to 4 minutes here, folks. So if you have any more questions, feel free to chime in. Maximum Overdrive, The Meg, yeah. Still, I get it. I understand why those movies are made, because it is situational. People are going to go watch James Bond to be James Bond. What's been so fun about James Bond is that they've elevated the story quite a bit recently. Yeah, and I would love to see Idris Elba as the next James Bond. Just
I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's too old, actually. It's a weird thing with James Bond. I mean,
how old was Sean Connery when he was? Kind of looked like he was 60.
No, at the end, yeah, but he started it in his 40s, and actually he was very young
Idris
looking.
Elba's what, 43? Is he 48?
Isn't he 50? I think.
Looks young. I don't know.
Yeah, I think he's a great actor. I mean, does he need to be British anymore? I guess that's the question. Do we have a younger British black actor that could, person of colour, that could do it instead?
Yeah.
I think I'm glad they've stopped making him just like swoon women in the moment. Just like, rather than he now has some emotional character, which is good. Yeah.
John says The Purge tests morals and makes a statement that it's much easier to form opinions when you're not on the receiving end of controversial issues. It definitely has character arc. Pretty refreshing for horror. It's very refreshing, and I think it's a good way to end the broadcast here. I think is just don't forget why you're telling the story in the first place, because we've been talking a lot about characters and flaws and situations and stuff, but going back to it and just the theme, a message, a meaning behind why am I doing this? What do I want people to learn from this? What do I want people to experience? The one thing that Sixth Sense does so well is that it's not just about a guy that didn't realize he was dead. It's about how it's the
Spoiler.
Here's the twist. But the way they delivered that was how we thought their relationship was crumbling, and so they kept it personal and emotional. They, Shyamalan, whoever helped him write it, focused on the lack of a relationship between the two, and so that made us think when he was dead, how devastating is it that they weren't able to continue to be in love, and it was so much. Then you elevate because there's meaning behind it. And because this guy, who is a ghost, finally did help a young kid. And so there's victory there. There's triumph that he did finally solve the problem that he wasn't able to solve when he was alive. As opposed to Casper and just kind of like, nobody knows that I'm dead, or, Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because we were speaking to one of the writers, Peter Yang, who's on our development slate, and he has written a very interesting script called The Fear, which is about war veterans and about racism and Muslims and family. And he's taken a very specific angle. But he, in real life, his other life, his many lives, is a stuntman, an actor. And he has been, his script is very full of heart, made me cry when I was reading it. And he is a stuntman on a lot of the big movies that are the kind of like the fodder that makes your brain just go, just I can watch it without thinking. But someone said to him on a set that you may not be a doctor, but you are creating something that the doctor watches when they're not saving someone's life. And it's that same thing about being, everyone has their purpose, everyone has their meaning in life. So it's not to really sit on a high horse about anyone else's. I think that kind of came out with that guy that was working for Trader Joe's, the actor that used to be in The Cosby Show.
Oh, yeah.
And he just said, a job is a job is a job. There shouldn't be this hierarchy about, I'm a better person than you because I do this. If you're earning money, trying to raise a family, trying to put bread on the table, trying to pay your rent. Excuse me, it's me with a burp. Excuse me.
Wow. That's a good way to end the show. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. So we all have value and we all have a message, and I guess keeping it fresh is keep remembering that you are important, your voice is important. We still need stories to help us think and change the world.
Don't try to do something no one has ever seen before. Just try to elevate the story that you might already have in your head. What can I do just a little differently to possibly present a different version? If you look at Judd Apatow, we don't need to go into this in terms of a long lecture because we're coming down to the end, but Judd Apatow came up with some interesting, fun, unique situations. Freaks and Geeks was kind of new at the time. Superbad is interesting because it's just this unique little story about two best friends and how they get into, but we've seen those wacky high school comedies before, but it's in his delivery of who these characters are and how they react to things that he knew was unique. He knew that his comedic voice was unique, so he focused on that. So it's like what you were saying. It's about finding who you are. What can I bring to this project to make it unique? I don't need to have this huge Sixth Sense twist to make it different. It doesn't need to be this brand new story like The Purge. It's just, you can keep it fresh in terms of your own voice and perspective.
And then just keep going, I think, is the other thing we're saying. We're saying keep it fresh. Find a way to keep it fresh for you so you're still interested in keeping going, because it seems to me this is a long game profession. Yeah. Like life, you hope is a long game kind of experience.
It takes a long time to get this thing going.
So, and if you love it, you love it. So keep doing it.
Right, just find new ways to love it. Otherwise, you're going to get burned out. But all right, everybody, thank you for coming. Thank you for listening on the podcast. Thank you for being here on Facebook.
Yeah, we really do appreciate it.
Thank you for all the comments. You guys are awesome. We're going to be back. I'm going to be back next week.
Yes.
Felicity is not going to be here.
No.
I might be by myself. We don't have a guest yet. I'm going to try to get a guest. I think we'll get somebody. But then the week after that, there will be another special guest. You're going to make them wear the
blonde wig again?
That's right.
You made Michael. What was his name?
Mike Brennan, one of my coaches.
Mike wore a
That's
blonde
right. He
wig.
wore a blonde wig when he sat in for Felicity.
You might have to put too much bronzer on as well for. So I feel like I'm so bronze. I keep catching myself, and I'm like, this area is so white in comparison to my really brown bronzer face.
I'm just noticing the light in the back window there. That's a good way to end. All right, everybody. So thank you for being here as always. If you want to watch past episodes, you can go to the Facebook page. I just uploaded a bunch of previous podcasts. If you want to listen to past audio versions of the Wine Wednesdays on our podcast page, it's just networkisa.org. I believe it's as simple as /podcast.
Or you can look at more videos as well. All the videos are listed on the Facebook page.
All the videos on the Facebook page if you want to watch. But that's it for this week. But I'll be back next week. We can wish Felicity a happy birthday since she's not going to be around.
Yeah, no, I'm going back to London town for 11 days for my birthday. It's in the middle of that.
She's going to be 19. So you can't drink.
155.
Can't drink when you're on vacation.
Well,
All
no,
right,
I
everybody.
can drink there. I couldn't drink here if I was 19.
A cheers with an empty glass. But
Cheers.
thank you for being here, everybody, and we'll see you
Yeah.
soon.
You're amazing.
Enjoy the rest of your summer. We're almost done, so hopefully you guys can figure something out and have fun with the rest of the warm
Come
weather.
and see us at Third Thursday.
Yes, third Thursdays if you're in Los Angeles and a whole bunch of cities. But we'll see you guys soon. Have a good night.
Yeah, thank you. Good night.